Okay, quick walkthrough. I bought the house for $55, put some work into it, and so we decided to rent it out.
Get the fuck out of my house! Get the fuck out of my face! You're the landlord! What the fuck you mean?
If you'd like to move, your lease can be null and void.
You have a lawyer. Yeah. You started trouble.
No, take that!
Welcome to another episode of Know Your Rights. I'm Britt Hyson, and today we are talking about renter rights. It's a known fact that a lot of millennials are choosing to rent instead of buy because we experience the housing bubble. So it's even more important today to really know your lease agreement and especially your rights between you and your landlord. Joining us today is CEO and co-founder of RadPad, Jonathan Eppers. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me in today.
We have a lot of different issues with, renter rights that a lot of people may not even be aware of. Like if a landlord were to enter your apartment, in what cases can a landlord actually enter your apartment?
Landlords can come in your apartment in an emergency situation. So if there's a fire, a burglary, they have reasonable suspicion there's, you're in harm or danger, they can come in your apartment. 23 states, including California and New Jersey, require that the landlord give you at least 24 hours notice before they can come in your apartment.
This is my property when I'm on here as a
No,
tenant.
it's not your property. I got news for you. You're wrong about that, too. You are
23.
not on your property.
A landlord may only enter a tenant's apartment under certain circumstances.
Let me see it.
In the other half of the states, they specify like a reasonable amount of time. Now that's sort of dependent on the relationship between the landlord and the renter. So, my advice to you is have a good relationship with your landlord, and they'll be sure not to come in your apartment without giving you adequate notice.
When would somebody be able to withhold part of their rent for repairs?
My advice is if you're a renter and you're finding yourself in a position where your landlord's not fixing issues with the apartment that you're having to fix and pay for out of your own pocket, and you feel like you should withhold that from the rent, my advice is don't. It's a risky situation, and once you stop paying your rent, the landlord then actually has leverage to take you to court to start the eviction process. If you're a renter and you're in a situation where you're paying to have your apartment fixed up, keep the receipts, document every occurrence, inform your landlord. If they're not reimbursing you, my advice would be to go to court in small claims.
For what reason can a lease actually legally be broken?
A landlord can break your lease and go through the eviction process with you if you stop paying your rent. Although that can be a drawn-out process, and as the process is going through the courts, typically most states allow their renters to stay into the apartment. Another reason why a landlord may try to evict you is if you're breaking the rules of the lease agreement. Most times a renter can legally break their lease if they are enlisted in the military and they get called to duty. That's an opportunity for you to break your lease. Certainly a landlord can't enforce that. If there's significant damage to the property caused by a natural disaster or a fire, let's say you're living in an apartment building and there's a fire that happens in the unit, you could break your lease for that reason. And then finally, you can prove constructive eviction.
So I'm happy that you brought up constructive eviction. Explain what that means and how it can actually be proven.
There's issues with the apartment that make it uninhabitable for the renter. So imagine if you're living in a cold city like New York and it's freezing outside, and your lease states you're supposed to have heat, and the landlord's not fixing the heat, so it's freezing your apartment.
Rose has put up blankets on her windows to keep the Arctic air out, but frozen pipes mean Rose can only get a trickle of water from her tap.
If you can prove through documentation that your apartment or your rental is uninhabitable,
Oh, it's cold.
you can go to the courts and prove constructive eviction and leave the apartment.
How long can a landlord actually hold on to a security deposit before they are required to give it back to you?
Here's some of my advice. Before you move out, bring your landlord over to your apartment, do a walkthrough. Make sure that the landlord and you are in agreement about what he or she's going to charge you for when you move out, if there are any charges. Most lease agreements actually have written clauses that specify what a landlord's going to charge you for example, carpet cleaning, repainting the walls, although some states require that the landlord does that without charging for that. If everything looks good, most states require that the landlord give you your deposit back within 30 days, so a month after you move out. Some states require 45 to 60 days, so most states are a max of 2 months.
Many Columbia residents want their money back, but their landlords aren't paying. It's an old issue, security deposits on apartment rentals.
New York has a law of a reasonable time, so what that means, I guess the courts will decide, but if I was a renter, I would expect reasonable time to be about 30 days to 2 months.
How often can a landlord actually raise the rent?
landlords cannot increase your rent while you're in your lease. Now, when your lease ends, a lot of landlords want to move you into a month-to-month. When you're in a month-to-month, they can raise your rent with, on average, about 30 days notice. Most landlords in most states, when your lease term is up, typically it's 1 year, will increase your rent anywhere from 2 to 4%.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure. If you would like to know more about renters' rights, you can visit onradpad.com. They have a section called Ask Radpad. Just click on that and ask away. For Know Your Rights, I'm Britt Hyson. We'll see you next time.